Do I Hear a Waltz? The origin story of this show is pretty fascinating. So, as we all know, Sondheim's first two Broadway triumphs were West Side Story and Gypsy. In both of those shows, Sondheim wrote the lyrics, but crucially, did not write the music. When he was brought on to work on West Side Story, he was like, I don't know, I really prefer writing music and lyrics together. And they were like, dude, you're going to be working with Leonard Bernstein. Like, shut up and let him write the music and write the lyrics. And Sondheim was like, okay, fine. And then Gypsy came along and he was like, I don't know, I really like writing music and lyrics together. And they were like, dude, shut up, you're going to be working with Julie Stein. Write the lyrics and work with Julie Stein. And he said, okay, yeah, you're right. And then he did Gypsy. And after that, he was like, okay, finally, can I please write music and lyrics together now? And they let him. And he did Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which was music and lyrics together. But his mentor, Oscar Hammerstein, to whom he owed everything that he knew about musical theater writing, died with this last request for him to collaborate with Richard Rodgers, who obviously was a longtime collaborator with Oscar Hammerstein. So your mentor dies, and his last wish to you is, I know you really like writing music and lyrics together, but please write lyrics with the man that I wrote lyrics with. Obviously, you're like, okay, I guess I'll do it. But there were a few things wrong from the start. Richard Rodgers was old, and he was grieving the loss of his longtime writing partner. And he had a lack of inspiration that came from that. And that was a big problem in their collaboration. Sondheim has often said that he kept trying to get Richard Rodgers to write things, and Richard Rodgers would mope about how he didn't have inspiration or whatever. And the other problem is that Sondheim likes writing music and lyrics together. The reason that Sondheim likes this is because of a belief that Sondheim has about the musical theater, which is that the melody line that the people are singing should sound as close to natural speech as possible. Not everybody who's ever written for the musical theater necessarily agrees with this, but it's one of Sondheim's guiding principles. If you think about how you would naturally say something that is a Sondheim lyric, usually the music that Sondheim writes to accompany that lyric matches the natural cadence of the English language. For example, if you were going to say, I wish to go to the festival, that's a very natural way of saying that. I wish to go to the festival. I wish to go to the festival. Right? It's very natural. Same with, there's a hole in the world, like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with shit. There's a hole in the world like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with shit. That's exactly how Sondheim sets it musically. There are a few technical elements that make this happen. The main one is the natural stress of English language. In the English language, we have certain syllables that are stressed or given emphasis, and certain syllables that are de-stressed, not given emphasis. For example, I have on my shirt, order, design, tension, composition, the principles from Sunday in the Park with George, right? Order. Or is given emphasis, der is not. If you were to say order, everyone would be like, sorry, what did you say? That's not an English word that I know. Order. If you were to say order, then it sounds like hors d'oeuvres. And then the audience is very confused because they have no idea what you're saying. So there's a stress in the language. Music also has natural stress to it. The most obvious example of this is rhythmic emphasis based on where the downbeat is. So the first beat of every bar is stronger than every other beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Order makes sense, right? Landing on beat 1, but order does not make sense. That sounds like hors d'oeuvres. Order. That is not how we talk. So, one of my curiosities when I was going in to study Do I Hear a Waltz, because I didn't really know Do I Hear a Waltz at all before prepping for this class, one of my curiosities was whether there was a disconnect between the music and the lyric. If this natural stress of English language was less of a priority for Richard Rodgers, and if that was part of the conflict in this collaboration. Well, literally the very first line on the cast recording, I click play on the cast recording, and the very first line that gets sung proved my point. So I couldn't find the piano conductor score for the full show, so I just kind of wrote out the lines that I'm going to be looking at by ear. So this is the first line of the first song on the cast recording. Someone ba 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 ba, without the lyric da 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 da. It's a very lovely melody. You know, we have this rhythm that's consistent. We have this ba 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 ba. It's a lovely melody. It's got a pattern to it. It's a great melody on its own. The lyric on its own, also fantastic, right? Someone woke up one incredible day, and the character goes on to basically say, this person had a brilliant idea to create the town of Venice. How could it possibly be that someone could just wake up and have this idea, let's put a town in the middle of the sea? And that's where basically the idea for the song comes from. But put it together, someone woke up one incredible day. How do you say that? Someone woke up one incredible day. You do not say, someone woke up one incredible day. That's just not how people talk. Incredible day. So that has to do with the second kind of emphasis, which is there's rhythmic emphasis, which I talked about, but also pitch. When we pitch up, it tends to equate to more stress in the syllable. When we pitch it up, for example, order versus order. Someone woke up one incredible day. Why is bull, incredible? The syllable bull is pitched up. I do not think that Sondheim would ever have set that line this way, right? Like, he would have gone, someone woke up one incredible day. He might have gone, someone woke up one incredible day, one incredible day, right? One incredible day, incredible. That's how we talk. Sondheim would never have said it this way. Another major offender that I caught by listening to the cast recording was Someone Like You. This is one of the first lines in Someone Like You. And it goes like this. We waited for someone. What? That's not how we talk. We waited for someone. Not we waited for someone. No one talks like that. And Sondheim would have probably said, I mean, one thing he might have done is said it like this, where instead of that half note where it's held for the full 2 beats, he may have said it like this, right? We waited for someone, where it's shorter. He may have said it like that. We waited for someone, instead of we waited for someone. And that brings us to the third kind of musical emphasis, which is note length. When a note is given a longer period to resonate, it's given naturally more emphasis. We waited for someone. The fact that this is a half note, so it's 2 full beats, gives that syllable, Ted, a lot of emphasis. What? Why? That is not how we talk. We waited. I've never heard anyone say that. We've waited. So more likely, Sondheim would have written something like, we waited for someone, right? We waited for someone. We waited for someone. That's how people talk. That is much more natural. So there are these two examples that I found that are really obvious, and obviously there's a lot more if you go through the score, of moments where Richard Rodgers was like, hey, here's a beautiful melody. And Sondheim was like, here's a clever lyric or a sentimental lyric. And they just didn't quite match up. Obviously, these people are both masters of their craft. There are a lot of instances in the score where, yes, the music and the lyric do match up very, very well. And, of course, if you take just the music on its own or just the lyric on its own, also, both are impeccable individually, right? Like, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum is a beautiful melody. And that melody goes on to develop in a way that's very moving. So it's not like Richard Rodgers doesn't know what he's doing. It's just that the collaboration between the music and the lyrics is, you can tell, it's a little bit strained. And obviously, after this experience, Stephen Sondheim was like, I'm never writing just lyrics to someone else's music ever again, no matter what. And he didn't until the very day he died. So that's a little bit about the importance of matching the music and lyric rhythmically and the emphasis of both. We looked at the three kinds of emphasis. There's rhythmic emphasis, right, with the downbeat. Order. Then there's pitch emphasis. Incredible day. The fact that it's pitched higher gives it emphasis. And then the third one is note length emphasis. We waited for someone. Great question here. The responsibility does lie with Sondheim for not finding words to fit with what Rodgers had written. So, yes, and no. The responsibility in any collaboration lies with both people, right? Yes, Sondheim should have found something better than we waited for someone, but it's possible he wrote the lyric first and then Richard Rodgers had this melody and just decided to set the melody and then they didn't have a chance to go back and fix it. There's also a situation where, like, Richard Rodgers wrote the melody initially and Sondheim literally couldn't find anything better to fit with that melody, and he was like, hey, Rodgers, do you think you could tweak this melody a little bit? And Rodgers was like, no, I'm so uninspired, I can only write so much music now. And so this is similar to Sondheim always gripes about the way he set the melody in Somewhere from West Side Story. That was the melody that Leonard Bernstein gave. Ba, 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 ba. And that second note is emphasized in all three of the ways that we were talking about, right? It's rhythmically emphasized. There's a place for us. It's on one of those downbeats, so it's emphasized. It's also higher. It's the highest note in that phrase, so it's emphasized because of the pitch. And it's also a full half note, so it's emphasized because of note length. There's a place for us. But Sondheim put the word on that note. There's a place for us. That is not how people talk. And Sondheim has griped about that in interviews ever since. He says, basically, he was young and inexperienced and also, like, couldn't find anything better, and Leonard Bernstein was not willing to compromise. And I guess that's the big lesson, is that in order for music and lyric to work together, the music needs to tweak to fit the lyric, and the lyric needs to tweak to fit the music. And that's why when Sondheim writes music and lyrics together, the blend between music and lyrics is so impeccable. Over to you, Gail.
Amazing. And I'm going to piggyback right on what you said to talk about a song from Do I Hear a Waltz? So let me quickly get this to y'all. There it is. Ta-da. So Mateo was talking about how Sondheim took this job out of respect for his mentor, Oscar Hammerstein. But I got to say, there was also pressure from Arthur Lawrence. Sondheim actually thought that he would lose his friendship with Arthur Lawrence if he didn't say yes. Mary Rodgers, his good friend, said, "Please write with my father. He's depressed and alcoholic, and he needs some help." So in fact, not only was Richard Rodgers burned out and tired and old and alcoholic, he was, in Sondheim's words, an arch conservative. And this experience actually was the worst of Sondheim's writing career. He looks back and he calls it a why musical. Nobody loved this. Why did you have to do this? He says friendship, obligation, and greed are not enough reasons to write anything. The greed being he assumed it would be a hit. There is a song in the score, though, that to me, Mateo, you can tell me if you agree, feels very Sondheimian. It's sung by an American couple who are trying to reassure themselves after the wife found the husband flirting. It's called "We're Gonna Be All Right." And Sondheim's original lyrics are typically for him cynical. He takes a cynical view of this marriage. For 1965, they were pretty revolutionary. So Sondheim says he wrote some lyrics that had some bite to them, gave them to Dick Rodgers, who thought the song was wonderful. And it's got all the stuff that we think of as quintessentially Sondheim: the cynicism, the edginess, the playfulness. So here's an excerpt from the original lyric that Sondheim wrote and presented to Richard Rodgers.
Sometimes she drinks in bed.
Sometimes he's homosexual. But why be vicious?
They keep it out of sight. Good show. They're gonna be all right.
So Sondheim gives it to Rodgers. Rodgers loves it. The next day, Sondheim says, Dick Rodgers called to lunch and kept slamming the lyrics against my forearm, saying, "This will not do, this will not do." And I kept asking why. And Sondheim says the truth is he gave the lyrics to his wife, Dorothy, and she didn't like it. You know, it's got stuff about sexuality in it. Some people speculate that the drinks in bed line in particular might have reminded Dorothy of her own marriage. So ultimately, the lyrics were rewritten to create what might be the worst, most boring song ever. Boring Sondheimian conclusion. It's hard for me to imagine that Sondheim actually allowed this song to appear in a Broadway show. Sondheim has also said that in this experience, horrible as it was, taught him a lesson. I learned the only reason to write a show is love, and nobody loved this one.
Please like and subscribe. Marquee, the Broadway Maven's weekly blast, comes out every Thursday. It includes piano talks, news, reviews, videos, Broadway blasts, quizzes, and more. Get Marquee for free and learn about all classes and projects at thebroadwaymaven.com. And here's a Stephen Sondheim playlist.